We're at the midway point of the season, and we've all got a pretty good idea of where things stack up at the moment. There is now a big enough sample size to form realistic opinions on what each team is doing well and where they struggle, how top players are performing compared to their expectations, and who is failing to do what was expected of them. In today's video, we're going to be discussing 5 star players in particular that, to put it simply, have been letting their teams down this year. This could be with their performance on the court, or their actions in other areas that have affected the success of the team, that overall has held them back from their goals as a group. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first star player we'll be discussing today that has been letting down his team this season is Zion Williamson of the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion is a player who oozes with pure talent and potential, but for most of his career to this point has just not been able to stay healthy. In the time he's been on the court prior to this season, he's been absolutely sensational though, dominating the paint at a historically great level, putting constant pressure on the rim, scoring inside, using his brute strength and agility to operate as a mismatch for most, but something just seems different about him this year. He's missed a small handful of games this season, but never more than one at a time, and has mostly been able to stay healthy and on the court, but his production has also dipped across the board, and he's arguably having his worst year on the court of his entire career, which is obviously a letdown for everyone in that organization who knows how great he is capable of being. This is a guy who averaged 27 points per game in his second season, 26 points per game last season, but now he's scoring a career-low 22 points per game, fewer than he even put up during his rookie season. He's also grabbing fewer rebounds per game than he ever has in his career, he's not playing as hard on defense, and the Pelicans as a whole have actually been 5.5 points better with him off the court, so while his numbers still look alright on paper, you can see his effort out there comes and goes, and the team performs better with him on the bench, which is always a red flag for star players. The next star player that has been letting his team down this season is Zach LaVine of the Chicago Bulls. So many things about this year's Bulls team just exemplify the phrase too little too late. The team started the year terribly with a record of 5-14, and it was around that point that rumors started to swirl about them finally waving the white flag and surrendering to their impending rebuild, which would start once they traded Zach LaVine. This was also the point where Zach LaVine suffered an injury that held him out of the next month of play, and in that time, the Bulls actually started to turn things around without him, and are now in 9th place in the East standings, fighting for a playoff spot. The issue, though, is that they've clearly been a better team without Zach LaVine, who has been having what is easily the worst year he's had in years across the board, and while they are still looking to trade him, they're struggling to find an offer with appropriate value because of how much his value has tanked this season. His max contract still has 3 more years left on it, which is a tough sell for a team to take on, an inefficient volume scorer that hasn't even been putting up 20 points per game this year. The Bulls have been 6.1 points worse per 100 possessions with him on the court, but they also know any trade they make to ship him out would be a deal where they were forced to accept pennies on the dollar, so in nearly every way, LaVine has been a letdown for the franchise. The next star player that has been letting their team down this year is Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors. Draymond's year so far has been nothing short of a disaster both on and off the court. Throughout the entirety of the Warriors' reign on top of the league, he's been at the core of a lot of their success as their defensive anchor, as a reliable playmaker on offense, and someone who sets the tone each and every night for them. The Draymond experience has always come with some controversial moments that have gotten him in trouble at times, but it's never been anything like what we've been seeing this year. We're barely halfway through the season, and Draymond Green has already been suspended twice already. I don't think you realize how absolutely ridiculous it is to be suspended 2 times in the same season, especially when you consider the fact that his suspensions have been because of his outbursts on the court, physically harming opponents because he can't keep his composure. That in and of itself has been a big reason why the Warriors season has been such a disappointment, as they currently sit in 11th place in the Western Conference standings, but even when he has been on the court, his impact has been nowhere near where it used to be during the team's heyday. He used to be the engine that made everything work for this group, but now the Warriors are performing 5.6 points per 100 possessions worse with him on the court, which is especially bad considering they haven't even been that good with or without him. The next star player that let his team down big time this season is Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies. I realize this may seem harsh, but the fact of the matter is that the Grizzlies being where they're at right now is almost solely due to Morant's actions off the court that resulted in him being suspended for the first 25 games of the year. Had that never happened, and he was playing from the season opener, then the team would still more than likely be in the playoff hunt as one of the better teams in the Western Conference, just as they had been in each of the last 2 seasons, but instead, the team had to try to stay afloat without him, which they just could not do as they are now a bottom 3 team in the West. Without him in those 25 games, they won just 6 of those outings, essentially digging themselves a hole too deep to escape from. Morant is now injured for the rest of the season, which isn't really why he's on this list at all, but it has locked them into their season being one to forget, when they should have been working to continue on the positive trajectory that they were building up since he got drafted. What's obviously most disappointing about it all is that it was self-inflicted and didn't need to happen, so all they can do now is hope that they land a solid pick in the draft and get someone good with it, and then try to get back next season, which won't be easy with all of the contenders around them in that conference getting better every year. And finally, the last star player that has let his team down this year is Ben Simmons of the Brooklyn Nets. At this point, I realize that calling him a star is a stretch, but this is a former multiple-time All-Star that has managed to fade into obscurity despite hearing all about how his revenge tour is about to begin in each of the last 2 off-seasons, and he's still in his mid-20s, so he's not even older. He forced his way out of Philadelphia with the intent to show what he's truly capable of doing on a basketball court, yet ever since his move to Brooklyn, he's barely even been a part-time basketball player. It's been 2 years since he got traded, and when he's on the court for the Nets, he's only ever looked like a complete shell of his former self. This season in particular, he's only managed to appear in 6 games, with his nagging back injury being much more severe than initially advertised. All the while, we've continued to hear people from his camp say that Ben will be there to fix all of the team's issues when he gets back on track, but when he's been on the court, he's only scoring 7 points per game and dishing out 6 assists over the last 2 years, which is as underwhelming as it gets for someone with his talent. The Nets are now sitting in 11th place in the Eastern Conference standings, despite coming into the year fully planning on trying to fight for a playoff spot, and Ben hasn't been able to contribute anything meaningful yet during his time on the team. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these disappointing star players. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.